Hello, Erin. Hello, everybody at home. Welcome to Trek on Tuesday. I think people are going to really want to chime in on today's episode. That's my take. What do you think, Erin?
I think you were 100% right. This is a very exciting time of the year, Gina. It's Pinewood Derby season. There are Pinewood Derbies. If they haven't happened yet in your pack, they're going to happen probably pretty quick. Maybe you've already started building the car. Maybe you've got that block of wood. Still trying to decide what to do with it, right? How do I design it? What color should I make it? We're here to talk about Pinewood Derby today. And more specifically, Gina, we're going to get into how many questions do we have? I can't remember how many there are.
They're not numbered, so it's impossible
to know. Impossible to know. But it is some of the most frequently asked questions. You've heard of FAQs. These are the most frequently asked questions about the Pinewood Derby. And I'll admit, looking over our story, I'm glad behind the scenes Brian provided some answers because I didn't know the answers to every single one of them. We've got good stuff. We've got not just the questions, but the answers also, Gina, to the most frequently asked questions about the Pinewood Derby, not as determined by you, not as determined by me, it's determined by science. Google is the one who determines, these questions. So
right, science and robots and algorithms.
Yes, is that artificial intelligence.
Hello to Anna, thanks for tuning in. Hello to Pack 38 and Troop 38, thanks for tuning in. So the origin of today's idea, basically about Christmas time, we start sharing lots of Pinewood Derby articles on Facebook. We have so much Pinewood Derby content on scoutlife.org. You're honestly missing a huge advantage in your races if that's what you're looking for. If you're not heading to scoutlife.org, we're going to talk about some of those articles and videos soon. But we posted one over the weekend. And honestly, we're no stranger to getting a lot of comments, a little bit of, warring philosophies, scouting philosophies.
Usually respectful. Usually.
Yeah. Usually. I mean, sometimes not, but usually they are respectful. I would say this one's pretty respectful, but we realize people have got some different opinions on Pinewood Derby. And in fact, two of the people on today's show even disagree on some aspects of Pinewood Derby.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a heated debate, most likely today, folks. You're going to want to stay tuned for that for sure. And I would say if you guys have any questions that we don't address, feel free to ask them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them. We know a decent amount, I would say, between the two of us about Pinewood Derbies. We don't know every single thing, but we know some stuff, right?
Oh, we do. There's a lot of scouting program elements that are very far out of my wheelhouse, but Pinewood Derby I kind of get, and I feel like I have a good understanding of it, mainly because of the resources on Scout Life and experience to be a little more hands-on with Pinewood Derby cars over the years.
And you said it right, Gina. There's a lot of good stuff on scoutlife.org. I do want to reiterate what Gina just said. If you are a Pinewood Derby expert, you're going to want to go to scoutlife.org, see what we have to say. If you've never done one before, guess what? You're going to want to go to scoutlife.org and see what we have to say.
Absolutely. Rob invites us to take part in their district race.
I've been to that event before. It's been a few years, but we had some kids in my pack qualify for that district race in the middle of a very, very busy mall. A lot of fun, very exciting. A lot of people cheering and screaming and hollering.
Yeah, that's a great place to do it.
Yeah, shopping mall.
I read your article recently on passive recruiting. That would be a great way to do some passive recruitment.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. Host a Pinewood Derby, kids shouting and having fun in the middle of a mall. Yeah.
100%.
Hello, Pack 84. Hello, new Pack 84. That is so exciting. Rusty, great job over there. Hello, Derek. And Anna says their race is January 28th. Yep, it's prime season.
Yep, it is.
Wait, you're going to like these facts. Anna, file these facts and share them as just, making casual conversations with the other parents at the Pinewood Derby race, I feel like.
Exactly.
Some of it's interesting, some of it and I think some of it's up for debate. First off, Erin, this isn't in the FAQ, but this was a point that arose when we posted something on Facebook and we said, here are some tips to make a really fast car. And it's one of our favorite Pinewood Derby videos. Former NASA scientist Mark Rober kind of goes over some basic physics for us and then some pointers for how to make a fast car. The comments that we got, or a couple of them, were, hey, you're not supposed to go into the Pinewood Derby race wanting to win. You shouldn't be aiming to win. What are your thoughts?
Well, so I will tell you, Gina, exactly what I told as a former Cub master. I was involved in a handful of Pinewood Derbies and a lot of new parents every year who had never done it before. And this was always my little short, I'll give you the mini version of the speech that I gave to them. If your child wants to win, that's fine. That's good. That's healthy. Work with them on building a fast car. There's nothing wrong with that. If your child doesn't care, then don't care for the child. You know what I'm saying? If your child doesn't, if your child just wants to make a pretty car and doesn't care how fast it goes, that's also okay. Both of those ways are fine. Let your child take the lead on that. What I encourage parents to not do is be overly competitive when your child doesn't care, right? If your child just really doesn't care, Mom, Dad, I just want to make a car that has Star Wars people on it and, shoots lasers out. Just do that and don't worry about trying to win in that case. But I also have no problem if the kid is really driven and competitive and they want to win. That's great. Get online with your kid. Go to scoutlife.org. Find the tips. Do the extra work. It's a great lesson to be learned. Do the extra work. Make your car go fast. Now, keep in mind, there might be some other kids in your den who also want to win. They might also have fast cars. There's no guarantees. So there's a great lesson to be learned there. But that's always been my philosophy on the Pinewood Derby. Let your kid lead the way. Don't decide for your kid if they want to win or not. Let your kid decide. Talk to them about the race, what to expect, what it's going to be like, and let them decide. Gina, your thoughts?
No, I actually really agree with you. Anna does too. She says it's not about the win, it's the memories building the car. Totally. Derek points out he was in the comments on this article, and there were a lot of differing opinions. I definitely agree, Derek. But
knowing Derek, he was probably right in the middle of it.
Yeah, Derek. No, Derek's, great, respectful, wonderful fan of the show. Shout out to Pack 4118 also. I just want to say I agree with you. I've been thinking about this all weekend, and I really think it is absolutely okay to want to win. Absolutely. If your kid wants to win, and it's okay to kind of encourage wanting to win. And that goes for the design competition. I don't think just thinking like I want to make a Star Wars car, I don't care if it goes fast, means you don't want to win. You might want to win the design competition.
That's a great point. Yes. Not necessarily the fastest car, right? Maybe the best designed car, most creative car, things like that. Yep.
But what I think is very important, and I really feel like one of the values of the race is learning that you may want to win, but it is okay if you lose. And there's a great chance you might lose or not get first place.
I think that's a
lot of people who want to win.
Yes, and I think that's a great discussion to have with your scout in advance. Just let them know, hey, there's 4, 5, 6, 8 other kids in your den, and somebody's going to finish in first, and someone's going to finish in second, somebody's going to finish in third. We all hope it's you, but it might not be. And let's talk about how we're going to handle that. What are you going to do when your friend wins and you don't, right? And hopefully you'll slap high fives. Maybe you're a little disappointed, and that's okay, right? But you be a good sport about it.
Right. And you said too, I think the other point is that a parent shouldn't be adding to the pressure to win.
That's the main thing that's really the only way you can go wrong, in my opinion, with the Pinewood Derby, is if you don't take direction from your kid. If you're the one that really wants to win and your kid doesn't care, you kind of have to yield to the kid at that point. You can talk about it. You can talk about why maybe you should try to win or go fast or have the most creative car or have the best paint job or whatever. But at some point, it's like an Eagle Scout project. The kid has to lead the way. The kid has to decide what to do.
Right. Well, Aaron, another topic that I don't think is up for as much debate, but sometimes our audience surprises me and they have other theories or knowledge I don't have. But one of the most Googled questions is who invented the Pinewood Derby? Mm-hmm. Do you know?
Only reason I'm familiar with this is because I did a story on this for Scout Life magazine many, many years ago. I know it was a gentleman out in California, and I'm reminded that his name was Don Murphy. He was the Cub master of a pack out in California in 1953, and he just had an idea, right? Sometimes our scout leaders can be creative and come up with these ideas of projects and things we do. And as long as it abides by the scout law and it doesn't violate anything in the Guide to Safe Scouting, go for it. And they did. And unbelievably, here we are now. How many years ago is that? My math isn't very good, Gina. 70 years ago?
Right.
No one could know, but it's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't know till I read the answer today on this, which is
I did
shocking.
A story about this many years ago in Scout Life magazine. And Mr. Murphy is the gentleman who invented it. He was just a Cub master, just like any other Cub master. Had the idea.
Some other Cub master out there could come up with a program changing, shaping idea that
exactly
Cub
right.
Scout packs around the country could be doing. And
Our friend Anthony and our friend Lisa, who have joined us on Cub Chat Live, have often said to me that same thing, that some of these ideas that have become such fun parts of the program, or some of these activities that have become such fun parts of the program, were just ideas that volunteers had. And so we encourage those kind of ideas. Of course, obviously, follow the Scout Law, Guide to Safe Scouting, all that stuff like that.
A couple comments. I saw a few minutes ago that Anna had said she has some tricks up her sleeve that she learned from our site and no one has seen and she can't wait. That's what I'm talking about, Anna. I really think a lot of you guys could benefit from taking a few of those little tricks off of our website.
Yes, very impressive.
Rob says he always goes for best design. He's an electrical engineer, not a mechanical engineer. He thinks he wants to add lights and sound this year. Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of very simple ways to add lights and sound. Maybe not what you're looking for, Rob, but maybe it is. Scout shops sell these lights and sound kits now.
Yes.
And
they didn't even have those when my son was doing the Pinewood Derby. That's a relatively recent phenomenon that scoutshop.org has done. They've got some really cool stuff.
Well, if I was going for speed and I was going to be very competitive on the speed aspect, I might be like, I'm not putting those on. They're going to mess up my weight distribution.
Aerodynamics, or exactly.
But if you're going for design, I would be all in on that. But that could be something you disagree with out there. Maybe you think, well, you shouldn't let that hamper putting on the lights and sound ever. And that would be fine.
It's up for debate. Yeah.
Right. Well, it kind of brings up what a lot of people want to know. What I think might be many parents' very first Google search when their kid brings home that block of wood. Maybe they've never made a Pinewood Derby car before, and they type in, how do you make a fast Pinewood Derby car? And I feel like we have got the resource for you if this is a search term or this is something that you're wondering about. And I don't think it's controversial. I think the science is pretty sound. And I think that it's okay to be curious just how to make the car fast. That's kind of the original point of the race. So we have this wonderful video we talked about at the start of the show. And it is by Mark Rober, like we said, former NASA scientist. It's got some really basic, easily applicable tips for how to make your car fast. It also weighs the pros and cons of each of these. Like if you had to choose one thing, this is what we'd say to do. And he also talks about some things that might not even be allowed in your race. So you really have to check your pack rules because they all have different rules. There's rules on the box and you can on the box of the car that you get, and you can assume that those are definitely part of whatever your race is. But there might be some other specific things, particularly when we talk about like bending axles. That's a big one where I know some packs do not allow that. Some packs are totally fine with it. That rail riding and kind of like realigning
when it kind of only runs on 3 wheels. Yep, that's kind of allowed in some places and some places not. Yep.
It's something else he talks about is how important it is to reduce friction and air drag. We've got a great video on our site about how to polish the axles. We also did an experiment using this video a few years back where we took 2 cars out of the box. I'm just talking Pinewood blocks. We stuck wheels on them. One set of wheels, we polished the axles. The other set of wheels, no polished axles. Again, on just plain uncarved blocks, raced them. Hands down, every time the polished axles car won.
Yep. I feel like the tenets of this video and Mark lists 7 things. Maybe you can debate on which one he should have put higher than the other one, but they're all pretty sound.
Yeah.
And if you do all 7, if they're allowed, and again, like Gina said, they might not be allowed in your unit's race. Check the rules in your race. There are no national BSA Pinewood Derby rules. Rob in the comments mentioned a district race. You might want to check the rules of your district race because the rules of your unit race should probably coincide with the rules of your district race, since that's where you're going to be going if you go fast enough. They might not allow you to bend the axles, like you say. They might not allow you to rail ride, which is where it rides up on 3 wheels. I think you could maybe argue about the order. I think this is more important than that, whatever. But I feel like he's got the basics covered. You really can't go wrong with the science in this video.
And I'm going to argue with you, Aaron.
Please,
I don't think that the order matters. I think very clearly it's all about weight. I'm just putting it out there. It's all about maxing out the weight and putting it in a very specific part of the car.
Right. Yeah.
And the other things might make a little bit of a difference, especially when we talk about aerodynamics. Like it can kind of help, but you could send a car with a weight placed in the appropriate place that is just an uncarved block, and I think it could beat a lot of cars. But again, that's just my opinion.
Right. Here's a good question when it comes to weight, Gina, and a question that a lot of people ask. How do you weigh a Pinewood Derby car? It's probably in your pack, maybe the night before the race, maybe the morning of the race. They're going to weigh your car to make sure you don't exceed the weight limits. Usually, I think 5 ounces is usually the weight limits, if I remember right, maybe 7.5, something like that. You need to know before you turn it in how much it weighs. Do you have any experience with that, Gina? Have you ever done this before?
Yeah. Usually you weigh right before race time, right? And a lot of times your race officials will allow you to adjust your weight right there on the scale before you walk away, or maybe you drop your car off for a weigh-in. They might let you have one rebuttal. I think that usually the rule is that you can't go over the weight. So you want to kind of go right below it.
Yes.
And then if you find out you're able to add, like a half ounce, or you have just a tiny bit of putty or something that you're going to add to it at the last second, usually they allow that. There might be some packs that say you get one weigh-in, and that's something you're going to want to find out ahead of time.
Yeah, depending on who's running the Pinewood Derby. We used to have a dad who was really into it, and he would bring coins and little extra weights like that kids could just tape to their car if it was, really, really underweight. Like you say, you want to get right up to that, whatever that maximum weight is, without going over it. One thing that me and my son used to do is we would take we'd carve the wood, take the axles, take the wheels. If there were any accessories added on there, we paint it. And then before we really put it together, we'd weigh all the pieces, because that just kind of gives you an idea of what you're working with. Take the weight before you put it all together. So then this is way too heavy. At least gives you an idea of how much weight to use. Some people like to work the weights into the design of the car. We've seen some examples like that, right?
Yeah.
Where you'll see weights on the back of the car or the middle, wherever it's supposed to go. And it looks like an accessory to the car, right? Well, how do you know how much of that to use? You weigh it all together on like a little food scale, a kitchen scale, right? Weigh it all together. If you put it all together, it's going to weigh the same as it would if it's just in separate pieces, right? So pile all that stuff onto your kitchen scale. Make sure you're 4.9 ounces, something along those lines. And you'll be good to go.
Yeah, you're right. 5 ounces is where you really want to, that's where you max out your weight.
Right.
And you made another great point that paint weighs as well.
Yeah,
and
right.
I know a lot of people debate over there's decals you can put on versus paint. I know when we talked to the New York City Cub Scout pack, they had said everyone uses the decals because we know that it doesn't weigh as much, I guess. And so that's definitely the new thing. I know people bake their cars to kind of take some of the weight out of the wood so they can center more of it right around where your axles. But you're gonna have to watch the Mark Rober video and check out the resources on Scout Life to learn all about that. We talked about weighing your car out of the box. I think you said that the Pinewood block itself weighs 3.5 ounces without any modifications. That's the wooden block is 3.3 ounces. The wheels and the axles at about 0.2 ounces. I guess if anybody at home is wondering about what are some creative ideas for how they could weigh it before they get to the race, maybe they want to do a little prep. I'm thinking you need a food scale. Yes, probably not your home scale that you weigh yourself on would work.
We use a little kitchen scale that I found in a drawer that works great. And was basically exactly what your pack is probably going to use, something very similar to that when you check in. So that's give you a good idea. Not all scales are exactly the same. So you want to push it as close as you can, but not too close. And keep in mind, depending on how your car is designed, might be easier to add 1/10 of an ounce than it is to take 1/10 of the ounce away at the end, depending on if your weights are really glued in there or dug into the wood or something like that. Might be easier to add a little bit on weigh-in day than it is to take it off.
No, that's such a good point. And we actually jumped ahead a little bit, and I feel like we've answered a few of these questions, but you just said, how do you add weight to your Pinewood Derby car? We've answered that. That's something else people Google. But like you said, it's better to not make that weigh at home. Say you're at 5 ounces and make that permanent, because what if it just goes over a little bit differently, or if it goes over that weight on the official scale?
Right.
You want to be able to take that back.
Anna points out in the comments, she's exactly right. If it's off in weight, you're probably going to have to go with whatever the official scale says at the race itself. So Anna might have tried to argue, well, on our scale, it said this, but probably need to go with whatever happens. Great point. You do need to be aware of that and keep in mind how you're going to either add weight or take it off if you have to once you get into that weigh-in.
You also might be wondering, as many folks out there do, how do you add the weight to a Pinewood Derby car? And there's different kinds of weights you can use, magnets you can use. Scout Shop has like some really precise little ounces, half ounces, and putty you can use. I would say that Scout Shop is where you can get the largest variety of weight that you can add. But I am trying to remember, and somebody at home can remind me, but one coin weighs exactly an ounce. One of our coins that we use, and I can't remember if it's a nickel. I feel like it's a nickel.
That's a great point. I have seen people use nickels because I think they're the biggest, maybe the heaviest. That could be right. I want to say real quick that Scout Shop, one of the cool things that they sell are little weight sets that look, like we said, like accessories of the car. My son had one from Scout Shop that kind of looked like the undercarriage of a car, like it almost had little exhaust pipes coming out the side. So it was a decoration, but it doubled as a weight set, and it was long enough, and it was designed to fit in just the right part of the car, kind of a little bit towards the back, I think is where we put it. And that was really cool. But then, sometimes you can just strap a couple of nickels with tape, Scotch tape or something like that to it. Depends on how much trouble you want to go through, right? Sometimes that can work just as well.
Absolutely. Or you might have like a little hole drilled out in the top that fits.
We never did that,
perfectly.
But I'm so jealous of those because it looks so cool. Like a little enclosure for the weights to sit in. That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You could be doing that with nickels or whatever coin you're using, or other they have like little round weights you can stick in there too. They kind of look like tiny watch batteries or something. Go ahead.
I was just going to point out what Wendy says about they have drop-off times the week before the race. That's really interesting. We used to do it the night before the race. The week before the race is probably an even better idea. And the idea is you don't want to be scrambling the morning of the race. Depending on how big your pack is. If you have a big pack, to let everybody race, it can take a while. Kids get bored. You don't want to be spending time that day necessarily trying to weigh cars and figure out exactly how that process is going to go. Winnie points out they did it a whole week in advance. That gives them time to get all the cars plugged into the software. I remember we always tried to get everybody to send us their car name in advance, and we give it a little number, a little sticker, but inevitably somebody shows up and they want to change the names. So, that's a good idea to do it all a week early. You have a week to input everything into the software. So that way, when race day comes around, you're basically ready to go, which is what you really want. You really don't want to be wasting any time on that day typing in the names of cars and kids and things like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's becoming closer to the norm. I feel like maybe the pandemic has made it so that usually there's like a drop off, or for a lot of packs, there's a drop off, kind of like you're describing. Some folks were doing virtual races last year. Remember, we talked to that one guy who had put together like a really wonderful production kind of setup.
Yes.
We need to talk to him again. That was really, really cool.
It was very cool.
We talked a little bit about where you can buy Pinewood Derby weights. Of course, Scout Shop is our number one recommendation, but there are other hobby stores where you can buy those things as well.
Yep.
We always hear too, you can use, of course, lead-free, but fishing weights, ball bearings, or coins, like we said. But many packs don't allow lead weights for safety reasons. We certainly don't recommend that you would use lead weights of any kinds. So, and Anna says they use pennies.
Yeah. Whatever coin works best for you.
Aaron, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
The age-old question, where should you put weight on a Pinewood Derby car?
And this is one of the questions that Mark Rober addresses in his video. And some people have debated this. And I think that even somebody in the comments said that Mark's advice was good if you've never done it before, but there may be some more advanced ways to do it. I think what Mark recommends is putting it right in front of the rear axle, about an inch or so in front of the rear. So it's, if you take the halfway point of the car, it's just a little bit back further from there. But Gina, I've talked to other dads who have backgrounds in engineering and design, and they swear, no, that's not right. So maybe that's one of the debatable points right there, where you do it. I feel like my personal experience, the back half of the car is the way to go. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think, Gina?
No, I actually really agree with you. I think it's the back half of the car. I know I've heard some debates, like you said, about the specifics of where that goes and maybe how much of a difference it makes. But I think that's just the number one thing. So I actually am excited to see that so many people Google questions about weights, where to place them, what have you. And I
It
think we're
matters.
moving on from the weight questions from now on, but
Yes.
the majority of the questions I think on this FAQ are about weights and weight placement.
Well, and like you said, there's a reason why that's at the top of the list, because it's like if the keys to real estate are location, 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 the key to a fast Pinewood Derby car is weight, weights, and then where you put them on the car.
Yeah. This is not something I would know because I feel like I've only used a tool to do this and I've really only seen people use a tool. And I know that this ruffles feathers when we talk about it because a lot of people are like, we're not allowed to do that in my pack. But some packs are allowed to bend the axles. So how do you bend Pinewood Derby axles by hand without a tool? Bending your Pinewood Derby axles will make the wheels ride up against the nail head, which creates less friction than if the wheel is bouncing around and rubbing against the wooden Pinewood Derby car body. It also makes alignment easier. An axle bending tool is the simplest way to do this, and these tools can be purchased at Scout Shop. I think we've demoed them before and even given some of them away. You can also get them at a lot of craft stores like Michael's and Hobby Lobby, but you can also make a slight bend in the axle using a clamp and a pair of pliers, if you think about it. So I think we're talking about both bending the axles for rail riding, where you're on or on three wheels, what have you, or aligning your axles. So again, if your pack says no axle bending, I would want to know, okay, do you mean we have to have four wheels on the ground, or can I straighten the axles? Is it okay if I straighten the axles? That would be important for me to know, I feel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you just bend one axle, the car's gonna ride on three wheels instead of four, and there is some evidence to suggest that's three wheels. There's less friction than there is with four wheels. It'll actually go faster that way. You can bend all four of them and create that little bit of a curve so that the wheel is riding up against the nail head and not bumping up against the car. So there's less friction. Obviously, that little teeny tiny nail head is going to create less friction than if it's bumping up against the side of the car. If you ever watch really closely a Pinewood Derby car just going down the track, you'll see those wheels, they wobble, bounce all over the place. And the more they do that, the more it slows the car down. So these are different ways that you can lessen the amount that those wheels basically bounce around by basically, you're kind of pushing them up against that nail head, which seems counterproductive, but that's better than having them pushed up against the car itself. Likewise, having them tilted and ride on three wheels instead of four, there's less friction. Again, may not be allowed in your race. I think, if I remember when my son's pack, I think they were allowed to bend all four of them, but not just one of them. To have them ride. So it had to ride on all four wheels, but you could bend them so the wheels would push up against that, outside part of the nail instead of pushing up against the car's body.
Yeah. So I feel like educating yourself on the difference between those is important so that you know the right question to ask. Don't put yourself at a disadvantage thinking, just don't mess with the axles.
If you're a scout leader, if you're running a Pinewood Derby race, make sure these rules are clear from the very beginning so there's no debate. Maybe different packs do it a different way, but as long as you present the rules early, you should be fine.
Yeah.
These are the rules.
Anna asked, where can we send pictures of our cars? What a great question. I'm so glad you asked. We at Scout Life love to collect photos of the cars. Every year we make a gallery behind the scenes, Brian does. And he's dropped a link in the comments where you can send us a photo of your Pinewood Derby car for this year. We would love to feature it in our gallery.
So many cool pictures of cool cars. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Aaron, if I asked you about polishing Pinewood Derby axles, or maybe the way that our folks at home are Googling it, they're saying, how do you deburr a Pinewood Derby axle? What would you say?
So I did this with my son at least once. We might have done it twice. And then there were a couple of other years where we just didn't really feel like bothering to do that. But I think, again, this makes a pretty big difference. It's just weird because when you look at a nail, it looks fine. It looks pretty smooth. It looks like, okay, that wheel will turn fine on there, but there are little bitty tiny imperfections in every nail. None of them are perfect. So polishing them, smoothing them out, deburring them, if you will, Gina. Oh. Yeah, I think it does actually make a difference. You can use a nail file. My son and I use sandpaper. So we did just exactly what this photo is right here. Put the nail in a drill, had a little bit of strip of sandpaper like that. You're supposed to use water on it. I don't know why exactly you put water on there, Gina. I guess maybe it just makes it go smoother. And it just sort of
paper softer, but I don't know.
Yeah. It just sort of grinds down the nail in a good way. It makes it smoother. It gets out little bitty tiny bumps that would be in there otherwise, and that those little bumps will slow the car down. Making it smooth like that, polishing it, actually makes a difference. And I think it did when we did it. It did make a difference. Now, I do remember polishing one nail. Maybe I was doing it wrong, Gina. Polishing one nail and looking at another nail that was not polished and going, I can't really tell the difference. But it did go faster. So those little imperfections are in there.
Yeah, maybe you need like a magnifying glass to really see them. But sometimes you can actually see the burrs a bit. I think, step one would just be polish them. Polish them somehow. Use some sandpaper you can get your hands on. But if you want to get really intricate with it, I know there are kits that Scout Shop sells for this, craft stores sell for this, but you could also Google what grade sandpapers people use. And usually I think they'll do 3 and they'll go from coarser to finer. So you don't just polish the axles, you really polish them. You get the big imperfections out and then you start kind of perfecting it as you go. We have a video to show you how to do that. The link is at the bottom of the screen. So check that out.
And again, it just depends on how much work you want to put into it. We've started to list now quite a few things you can do to make your car go faster, quite a few extra steps. It just depends if you want to do the extra work, or I should say, if your Scout wants to do the extra work, go for it. It's actually a fun project to work on together. And speaking of the axles, getting them to go fast, one of the easiest ways, and even if you don't polish them at all, if you don't grind them down with sandpaper, putting lubricant on there make a huge difference. Most races don't allow liquid lubricant because it's messy, it gets all over the track. But graphite, I didn't actually know exactly what graphite was until I made my first Pinewood Derby car with my son. It's this little bitty powder, dry. It's a dry little powder that makes it slippery. It makes the nails slippery. You can buy them at the Scout Shop. You can also buy them at some craft stores and things like that. I don't know ingredients of this dry lubricants: molybdenum, tungsten disulfide. We obviously know about that. These are powdered lubricants that you can use with graphite or on their own that will make your wheels spin faster on that nail. So again, you're probably thinking, how much of a difference could it possibly make? It does make a little bit of a difference. I am here to tell you, if you compare one car that's used graphite and one that doesn't, make a big difference. One way you can test that, even if you just hold your nail with the wheel on it and spin it with your hand, you can just spin it and watch it just sit there and go. If there's graphite on it. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. You've experienced that, Gina?
Yeah, I think that's how they say to test if you need to add a little more lubricant or not, is the wheel spinning test. And I can't remember off the top of my head how long the wheel is supposed to spin, but you want the wheel to spin a certain amount of time.
Yes. It should be able to spin a certain amount of time on its own with you just holding it there. And it's a lot longer than it would if you just took a nail without any kind of graphic or polish or anything.
Yep, exactly. So something people ask a lot, because it can be confusing, is what are the official Pinewood Derby rules? And it's, not a simple answer. Every pack sets their own rules for the Pinewood Derby race. There's no official national rules. So you have to check with your local pack, your district, or your council to find rules in your area. If you are a new pack and you are trying to establish rules and you're looking for a guideline, we've got a link for where you can see some general rules for Pinewood Derby that maybe you can use as a base. And these are something you could probably refine each year. If you're just starting out, you might realize some challenges and opportunities that arise each year.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. Gina, if you've never done it before, you're probably going to get questions from people and go, oh, you know what? That's a good point. Actually, we'll add that to the rule list for next year. Yeah, it's kind of an ever evolving thing. And another way to do it, Rob pointed out, he's running the district race in his area. You can always call your district commissioner, call your Rob, and ask him for your rules, whatever the rules they use, and just adapt those same rules for your pack. That's a really safe way to do it, because probably the top handful of or so scouts in your at your pack race are going to qualify to go on to the district race. It might be good to just go ahead and have them use the same rules already from the beginning.
Right. This question kind of goes along with our last question in that there's not that easy of an answer. People are Googling, what month is Pinewood Derby? Aaron, do you know?
Well, I always thought it was great when we would give out our Pinewood Derby cars at our last meeting before the holiday break in December. We would actually wrap them in little holiday wrapping, like presents, and give them out at our last meeting. The idea that they could maybe, if they wanted to, over their holiday break, work on the car with their parents with the Pinewood Derby coming up sometime that next month. We usually didn't do it at the beginning of January because people are just getting back to school. It's kind of a busy time. So we would wait until maybe 2/3 of the way through the month or something like that. Some folks do it in February, maybe. Again, might be a good idea to check with your district to find out when their district race is. I think Rob said his was in March. So you certainly want to do yours before then. If you want to send some kids to your district race, make sure you get yours done at least a week or two before the district race. That will sort of help you set the calendar. There's no requirement. You can do it whenever you want to. But I think basically anytime after the holidays and then anytime before the district race is your window of opportunity to fit it into your schedule. A lot of folks, the Pinewood Derby is their pack meeting for that month. So you can do that if you want to. Rusty says, yeah, their district race is in February. So if you're in Rusty's district, let's see, it's January 17th. Get that Pinewood Derby going if you haven't done it already.
Yeah, it seems like most do it in February with a close second of January and March, just from what I see on social media. However, you could have it literally any time of year. There is no rule.
Right.
Packs can set whenever they would want to have their race. So I always think that's interesting because there are a few packs out there that do it in a totally different time of year. And
Anna points out, my pack did exactly the same as your pack. We gave out our cars at our last meeting of the school year in December and then had the race about a month later. They can build them over the holidays if they want to, but they still have several weeks after that to build them later if they want to.
We talked a little bit about this earlier, but what kind of paint do you use on your Pinewood Derby car? That is something folks are Googling. Enamel paint will give your Pinewood Derby car that kind of a glossier finish, but any paint works great for your Pinewood Derby car. You can even use markers or stickers, meaning you don't have to use paint. The point is to be creative and have fun. Be careful that your paint and decorations don't rub or stick to your car's wheels. Many people find it best to finish decorating their cars before they install the axles and wheels. If you need design inspiration, we've got all those photo galleries I mentioned a little bit earlier where you can take a look at a lot of different cars. And I have learned so much just looking at the cars. I remember last year, I think they blew my mind when we were talking to both Scout Shop and looking at some of those cars, seeing that there's like an underlay kind of thing that the cars can fit, or maybe it's overlay they fit into so that they have, I don't know car terms, but the things over the wheels.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Pro tip on painting. So we've talked a lot about tool use today, drills, carving the wood, things like that. There are some things that a Cub Scout can't do, and quite frankly shouldn't do, especially with saws and things like that. Painting is one thing they definitely can do. Keep in mind those glossy, the fanciest, glossiest paints are also the hardest to wash out of clothes or desktops or whatever it is, Gina. I used to take my son out into our back porch, lay a bunch of trash bags or paper down on the ground and let him just go to town. Paint whatever you want. It's fine. Put them in an old t-shirt that you don't care gets dirty. That's a fun way to do it. Those fancy paints, I can just tell you, they don't always come out of your shirt.
Okay. Can a Cub Scout spray paint though, Aaron? They can?
We did, yes.
Well, good. That's good to know.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that. So yeah, but they still need your supervision and
put
guidance.
A block of wood on the floor, on the ground, on the concrete. I would put it on top of a piece of paper and just say, spray it, step back, let them spray it, turn it over, let them spray it again. Yeah, it's easy.
A lot of people believe you should not be spray painting a Pinewood Derby car. That's what I did.
I'm sure there are people that say, yeah, right.
Sounds like that's what you guys did.
Yep, we did.
Very cool.
And then there's also people, we've experimented before with different layers of paint where you spray paint one layer, then you paint a glossy finish on. Yeah, you paint it and sand it after that, right? And then do like a glossy finish on top of that. Again, just depends on how much work you want to do. If you're competitive and you want to win best paint job, go for it. That's great.
Yeah, and like we said as well, some folks do the car wraps now because they say they're lighter weight. And I feel like that's very interesting. And I feel like those New York City cars are pretty fast. So I'm going to take note of that.
Yes.
Aaron, I'm curious if you can answer this one because I think you mentioned that this was, kind of mind-blowing for you. Is there a front or a back on the Pinewood Jersey block?
Yeah, this is one of the ones that I remember every year when I get that block. So the Pinewood Derby block is a piece of wood with little notches in the bottom where the axles go, where the wheels go. And I remember several times getting it going, well, which one's the front? And I somehow looked online and found it. But every year I had to go look again. As you can see right here, the rear axle The one that's meant to be the rear axle is a little bit closer to the back of the car. The front axle is a little bit further away from the front of the car, right, than the rear axle is from the rear of the car. That's how you can tell which one is designed to be the front and which one is designed to be the rear. I'm not sure why it matters all that much, but we always did it that way because that's just the way it seemed that you were supposed to do it. So I don't know what would happen if you made the other end the front. Depends on the shape of your car. I guess if you're making your car into a wedge shape, my son was always a big fan, just like a slice of cheese, Gene. It was like a triangle wedge shape.
Yep.
And maybe you want the front axle to be a little bit further back, because if you cut too narrow, that front of the car is going to be too thin, and jamming your nails in there could cause it to crack. So maybe that's one reason why the front is where it is. We've also had cars at our race where we look at the cars and we can't tell which end's the front and which end's not the front. We have to say which one's the front, because you want to make sure you're lining up the right way. Which actually brings us to a question from the comments. Anna asks about a quick start. Anna, I would love to make sure I know what you're talking about, but there are some advantages you can get. So most Pinewood Derbies have a little thing that sticks up and the car rests against it. And there are some advantages you can get to carving the front of your car to where it would actually go sit on it more like that. And you basically start an inch or two ahead of the rest of them. Those were never allowed in my races. I think maybe that's what Anna's talking about when she says a quick start.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm misunderstanding
they all have to start behind the pin.
Yes.
But if the pin drops, some races, honestly, I don't know. I'm curious who has rules against it, but I think that there's like a indention in the car, so as the pin drops, it can fit into.
It can basically start going faster than the other cars could, right?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's
just a little bit before.
Right. Check your race rules.
I think it's so brilliant if your rules allow that to take advantage of it, but it takes some skilled carving. You also said wedge cars, and I just wanted to point out for anybody at home who's not looking to get into carving, they make the cars in a wedge already, so you can buy them wedge shaped. Yeah.
We've had several parents who say, I don't have access to a saw, don't have tools. Do you have any suggestions? And I was like, just use this one.
Wedge car. Yeah. Also, scoutlife.org has some different templates for how you could print them out, tape them to the car, draw the outline, and then carve it that way as well, where your scout can come up with a wild design. This is a part where I think definitely it should be youth driven, the design itself, how it's shaped, whatever it is. Even if it's your kid saying, I want X shape, and obviously you're going to cut it.
Yep.
I do think that this is ultimately their call.
Yep. And a good comment from Derek. He says the electronic track, the pin falls fast enough that it's not going to make a difference, I think is what he's saying there. Probably depends on your track. There are all different kinds of tracks. So I'm not sure if they're all like that. Some of them I know you flip it manually. You flip those pins down. That might give that extra second for your car to get a head start. There's lots of things you can do to try to get an advantage there. This is speaking of that, by the way, this is another interesting question that I had never thought of, Jim, that I want to get to real quick before we wrap things up. Can a Pinewood Derby car be shorter than 7 inches? Out of the box, that block of wood is 7 inches long. Can you cut it down to make it less than 7 inches? I honestly don't know. Usually it doesn't matter how short you make your car, but be sure to check your pack's rules. This is our official answers, before you get started. Each pack's official rules are different. I don't know if there would be any advantages to having a 6.5 inch car. I would love to hear if any comments from that, if there's an advantage. Honestly, I don't know. I almost think that in my race, we used to say that you had to keep that. You could carve your car however you wanted, but you couldn't change the base. The base still had to be 7 inches wide, which is what the block is coming out of the box. It's an interesting question, though, and it's interesting that many people are Googling it. Obviously, this is a question that people have. I don't know if there's an advantage to making it shorter or not.
I don't either. I honestly never thought about it, but it makes sense. Why wouldn't you just potentially cut it in half and have a teeny tiny car just for fun?
Right. Yes, for sure. And that's another thing that a lot of packs did. We always had a free-for-all race at the end where people could just do whatever they wanted to from their car, put a jet engine on the back if you want to, and just race it down as fast as you can. That was always fun.
Very good. I love Pinewood Derby. And this is not the end of our Pinewood Derby conversations. This was a fun look at some FAQs that we have on scoutlife.org. We have all kinds of fun resources there. We've thrown some URLs up on the screen throughout the show, so hopefully you guys are looking at those. we would love to tackle some of the topics that you guys are curious about if you let us know in the comments. And this is our annual reminder. Aaron and I fall in slightly different areas on this opinion, I know, but ultimately this is something, there's a balance to be struck between an adult is of course going to be helping your scout with the car, building the car, because a lot of the components of building a Pinewood Derby car are not safe for Cub Scouts, but a youth, the youth needs to be involved, heavily involved, right, Aaron?
That was always my guidance and always my belief. The spirit of the Pinewood Derby is that you build your car with your child. You don't build it for your child. You build your car with your child, and you can present options to your child about how we can do this. We can try to make it super fast. We can make it a block. We can make it a wedge shape. We can make it whatever shape you want, whatever color you want. Help them do that, whatever their goals are. If their goal is to be the fastest car, talk about different ways you can do that. If their goal is to have the best paint job, well, here's how you can do that. If your goal is to have the most colorful wheels, well, here's how you can do that. Work with your child on it together. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. You said it in a way that I totally agree with you, Aaron. So I guess we don't disagree on this at all.
I think we're more aligned than you realize, Gina.
Yeah, we're just like
Pinewood Derby car. We're aligned.
Our buddy Brian, formerly Brian on Scouting, wrote the article below. I love it. It's a parent helped build that Pinewood Derby car? ? Yes, that's the point. My least favorite part of my job, Aaron, is when we post these wonderful Pinewood Derby galleries. And all of the comments are adults who don't know the kids saying, a kid did not build that car. A kid had nothing to do with that car. Well, and I just think you have no clue. As long as the kid was involved in devising what this end goal was, maybe they painted it, carved it, drew it, whatever, were directing their parent, they did it. And there's just no room for those comments. I said it here. You guys are the inside scoop, but there's just no place for those comments. We need to assume the best in Scouts.
We had in our pack, Gina, a father who worked for his business was painting cars. Now, do you think that his and his son's Pinewood Derby car looked? Yes, of course it did. It was great. We all loved it. It was always exciting to see what they would bring to the Pinewood Derby that year. So we had no problem with it. They did it together, which of course is the way it's supposed to be. And yeah, I agree. It's all about doing it together. And hey, anybody, if you work hard, if you do it together, if you have access to the internet, you can get a pretty good looking car. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that the kid was not involved.
Absolutely. Derek says that they kind of document the process as they build cars. We've had that too, where we posted a photo of a car and a lot of people unfortunately jumped on and said, the kid didn't build this car. And the mom came back with all this photo evidence that he did. He designed it and he worked like a few years ahead on what his Pinewood Derby car is going to be. So, these Scouts will surprise you. Don't underestimate them.
Absolutely. As long as you're doing it together, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about this. Really, we talked about, it's about winning and learning how to lose, and you could go for design or whatever. Or it's not about winning, but what it really is more than anything is hopefully it's a chance for your kid to look back and remember spending time with you, learning about physics with you, learning about design with you, those kinds of things. That's really the goal of Pinewood Derby.
Absolutely, 100%. There are lessons to learn, not only like engineering type lessons, but just life lessons. I mean, one of the things about sports that's supposed to be really good for kids is that it teaches you how to handle losing. Pinewood Derby is a great opportunity to do the same way. If you finish in second or third or fourth place, what are you going to do? You're going to get mad? You're going to throw a fit? Or are you going to high five your friend and be happy for them?
Exactly. Well, Aaron, what a harmonious note we've ended this on.
Good show. Pinewood Derby. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I say it every February, every January. Good luck at your Pinewood Derbies, everybody. I hope your car is fast if you want it to be. I hope your car looks great if you want it to be. Hope it has the best paint job, the best wheels, whatever it is. I hope it happens for you. Most importantly, though, thank you all for watching. We appreciate it very, very much. We'll be back next Tuesday with another trek. Enjoy your week, everybody.
Yep. See ya.